We are back for another edition of the Agent Revolution podcast. This is Mike Wall, presented by Mike Wall Live, the place where we deconstruct the biggest challenges facing today's real estate agents so that they can build a sustainable, profitable, and most of all, fulfilling real estate business. Man, I'm really excited today. I got my friend, Mr. Greg Cummings, out of, you're in the San Diego area, Greg?
Yeah, San Diego, office based out of La Jolla, but we work all over the county.
Yeah, man, super excited to have you on. We're going to jump into our topic today, which is helping sellers rehab their property to maximize ROI. But before we do that, don't forget you can get more great free real estate business training over at MikeWallLive.com. Greg, are you ready to rock?
Let's do this.
Let's do it, brother. Well, before we get into today's topic, basically when we start the show out, I like to get a little background on my guest. And so if you don't mind, help the audience become a little bit more familiar with you. What's your background?
Absolutely. So I was mostly in the food and service hospitality industry prior to real estate. And this goes back to me living in Colorado for a while. I stopped there on my way out to move to San Diego and ended up there for about 5 years. And I worked in fine dining out there and then got a license out there, didn't really get involved, and finally set forth with my goal to be in California. Licensed in 2005, and the rest, as they say, is history. It's been a really great career. I'm sorry?
Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Texas.
No,
my whole family's from upstate New York, so they call me the lone Texan in the family. I don't really feel like a full Texan, I guess you could say. I got the best of both worlds, I suppose.
Sure, man. That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about your stop. You thought it was an overnight stay in Colorado. You ended up staying 5 years? That's right.
We were going to be there for 3 months. A friend of mine on our way here just to go, enjoy a winter season. And, 3 months turned into 5 years, which, also is a good thing. I mean, it did expose me to the potential of getting into real estate. I always say, though, I bought my first home when I was 19 and kind of got involved then, kind of saw, what it took, and it sort of planted the seed. But working in the fine dining there, I used to have these guys come in all the time that sold timeshare. And they used to always, oh, man, you can make way more money with us, whatever. But that made me go get my license. I did not care for timeshare whatsoever. I never did it. I shadowed them. It wasn't my thing. And then, very long story short, ended up, with the original plan to get out here to San Diego and then started a career out here.
That's great, man. Everybody's got a different, kind of a background story or something that inspired them or influenced them. And, it's really interesting how we have all these different events that kind of, unfold in front of us that push us in certain directions. And, that's why I always ask everyone how they got into real estate or what drove them to get into real estate. No one ever said, I went to college to become a real estate agent, or, when I graduated high school, I knew I was going to become a real estate agent. No one's ever said that. And I don't know why, other than maybe people who, their mom and dad were in the real estate industry. And so maybe they had a business and, they were going to go to work with their mom and dad. But other than that, you really don't hear anybody. Everybody's story's different,
Absolutely. Yeah. And finally getting out here, actually, I lived out here for about 1.5 years before I got into real estate, just because I didn't think it was fair to people to, not know where, La Mesa versus La Jolla is. You've got to have some background in the area for sure. So when I finally did, I was actually the RE/MAX San Diego Rookie of the Year in 2005, which was a good little start as well. That was a very easy market, I guess, to sell real estate as well, though.
Sure. That was right before the bottom all fell out, a couple of years before the bottom fell out, for sure, man. Yeah. So what did your business look like when you first got in? You probably were a solopreneur, right? You probably did everything on your own. Did you have intentions of building a team, or at that time were you just, was the status quo just to be a solo agent?
Yeah, there was no intentions to end up where we're at. In fact, a lot of the most recent stuff has developed over probably the last 3 or 4 years. Of where I've ended up with this. I started off, solo agent, like so many people. I was cranking away at first. I mean, I started right off. I had like a an $800,000 sale, then $1.4 million, then $2.3 million, and just kept racking these sales up through people I knew. And I was getting pulled left and right to join teams. Everybody wanted, oh, come join our team, whatever. And my broker manager was like, no way, you can do this on your own. You don't need anybody. Yeah. And so back then, though, I did everything and anything they would tell me to do. And a lot of that involved at the time, because I didn't have any money, is just sitting. I would sit open houses Monday through Saturday and not do them on the day that everybody else does. And so you get the random people in there. And I built a business out of open houses.
Yeah. When did you know, or what point did you realize, hey, I could really scale this. I could really build this out, but I'm going to need leverage. When did you start to realize that?
Great question. So, in late 2007, 2008, right when things were all falling apart, I was approached by a couple that she was a real estate agent in Arizona, and he was a website developer, and they approached me with this really great website that was all geared towards condos. Mm-hmm. And so, I made an agreement with them. I mean, the leads were barely trickling in here and there. Well, the next thing you know, it was like somebody just turned on a water faucet of leads. Yeah. And at that point, I needed help. There was just too many leads coming in. But rather than go right away and start building this team, instead, I did what, I had these what I called bench agents, where I located agents in different markets that, had enough business to know what they're doing, but not enough business that they didn't want an extra lead source. Right. So I would just farm out these leads that I was getting with a referral fee attached to it. And then lo and behold, I brought on, one teammate who is like a business partner now, and then one admin. And it was just really we were lean and mean for a while. It was just the three of us for years. Meanwhile, I'd have these other bench agents that I would send the leads to.
Did you say bitch agents?
bench.
Oh.
They could be bitches too, I suppose.
Oh my gosh, dude! Sorry, I didn't know. I actually thought you were saying bitch agents, and I was like, oh, that makes sense.
That's funny.
Yeah, what I want people to hear here is that it was. Oftentimes people make the mistake when they get into the business, like they're going to build a real estate team, and they start to build a team, and they don't actually have the business. And for you, and for most successful agents who build a team, it's the business that drives the growth, right? Mm-hmm. And certainly that's the way it happened with you. And so tell me, where you're at today. We're in 2020. What does your team look like?
Absolutely. So about 6 years ago, we grew by another member, not a bitch agent. We grew by one more.
You're taking that term. You're going to use that term now, aren't you?
So I got one more team member who was actually taking a lot of our lead, and doing really well with them. And he actually approached me and said, "Hey, would you want to just have me be on the team?" And so it still was. I kept not calling it like a team or a group. I was kind of like, we're like this collaboration of agents. I wasn't necessarily having meetings and help doing anything extra other than providing leads.
Yeah, it was all organic.
Exactly. I don't think I necessarily really wanted to be in that position. And then little by little, I've been coached almost my entire career. Mm-hmm. And little by little, I started giving more of my coaching stuff to my team members, and it was helping them. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, we grew by another member. I finally got in the schedule of a coach that I have been trying to coach with for years. And I got his schedule, and we coached for probably 3 or 4 months, and then all of a sudden he was like, "Wait a minute, you've got these other people you've got that are working with you."
Bitch agents, right? You had bitch agents.
Yeah. And so he goes, "Whoa, hold on, pump the brakes. We got to develop this and make this better." Yeah. And so we brought on. I just brought on this great gal, Jamie, who was more like an assistant role, but she wanted to develop into an agent. That's been a little over 2 years ago, and so she's hustling and doing a lot of business now too. And then I'm bringing on 1 to 2 more people this fall in preparation for next year. So that's probably going to be about where I cap it. I don't want to grow too massive. We've got, and then I want to bring on 1 more admin to help the team as well.
Right. And so is the ultimate goal for you to be able to step out of real estate or out of the production role, and then just more of coaching and training agents?
Yeah, I mean, if you want the truth to be told, I'm actually 2024. I'll have been in the business for 20 years,
Okay.
and that'll be going into my 20th year, and I'll also be turning 50. And I have this goal to travel full time. And when I say travel full time, in fact, that's something else that's sort of unique about my business. Is I typically have a minimum 3 month that I take off, not necessarily in a row. That's my biggest goal every year. That is my number one goal than anything else. And I work everything else around that. Okay. And that might be 3 consecutive months. It might be broken up. One year I took 7 months off and traveled the world. And lo and behold, we had one of our biggest years that year. So, and that was when we were still, 3 people. But anyway, so 2024, I have this sort of pipe dream of, and when I say travel, like I want to go to certain places and live there for at least a month, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months, who knows? And it's indefinitely. I don't know. Maybe I'll come back after 6 months. Maybe I'll get bored and come back after 1 month. Who knows? Right. But my sort of envision is to have everything up and running by that point where I'm not, actively doing as much, even probably a year prior to that, other than helping the team. Right. And with doing that sort of travel, you have a lot of downtime, and I got to stay very active. I got to have something going on. So my thought is, I'll still generate business for the team. I'll still help out Zoom and stuff like that. You can do all these calls nowadays. And so that's sort of my pipe dream, if you will.
Got it. Love it.
Yeah. As a 5-year plan, we started, my coach and I started a year and 8 months ago, and we're growing towards that very rapidly of getting there.
That's great, man. Well, let's talk a little bit about today's topic. And I think it's really important right now to have a discussion like this. Most people that are tuning in or going to listen to the podcast today are tuning in because they want to know how to talk to sellers, how to help sellers rehab or prepare their home to maximize the return on investment, right? And we've all walked through a house with the seller saying, hey, should I do this? Should I do that? What should I do to get the most amount of money? And, most of the times we're thinking, right, kitchens and bathrooms. And while in some cases that does help, there are other times that may not be the best course of action. But why I think it's so important right now is because, let's face it, we're in a really good real estate market, at least here locally. Sure. And, agents, it's really easy to sell a home. So, a seller can be very discerning about the agent that they choose to represent them. And, you want to make sure if you have an opportunity to interview for the job of helping someone get their home sold in this competitive market, that you can go through and talk intelligently about helping somebody maximize the ROI or get the most amount of money when they go to sell, right? Yep. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So right now, like, when you go onto a listing appointment, and be it, whether you're competing or it's somebody in your sphere of influence, what kind of conversation are you having right now with the sellers to kind of I guess set the course for what they should do and what they shouldn't do?
Great question. So I'll back up a little bit on this too, because one of my biggest lead sources for several years was absentee owners that I was telephone prospecting to, and calling people that, were out of area, that had these rental properties in the area, and the market was escalating. So it's like, hey, have you thought about selling, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times these sellers, they never come back down to meet me in person or to look at the property. Yeah. And so where this all started was taking these home, you show me a tenant that keeps a home as good as the owner is going to keep it. They're very rare to find. Right. And so these were the prime candidate homes and a lot of condos too, just to go in and freshen it up. And so I can't tell you how many conversations I've had where I showed them like the before and after, and they're like, wow, I can't believe that. And so, the things that I bring to the table while doing it's a lot of stuff we all know, but I think a lot of sellers don't really think about how important it is. And it's inexpensive stuff, flooring, paint, little items that are broken here and there. I'm not talking about a full, on rehab, but you paint kitchen cabinets and put some new hardware on them, and you just increased your value. Yep. And the reason why is because buyers 80+% of the time buy an emotion. And they want to walk in and they want to feel good. And when they walk in and they have that emotional attachment, they're going to pay top dollar. And when several of them walk in at the same time, they're also going to pay top dollar. And now you've got multiple offers. Right. It's really that simple. I could show a buyer the exact same two condos, and one is, run down and beat up, and one is, lightly fixed up and staged, and they're always going to gravitate towards that one over there.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And it can mean the difference of tens of thousands of dollars just by making a few small tweaks in some cases. And just for those of you who don't know, I'll clarify, absentee owners, which Greg mentioned he was marketing to, are essentially people that own a home that don't live there, or it's tenant occupied. They either live somewhere else or out of state. And oftentimes, they're a little more motivated because perhaps they're not interested in being a landlord anymore, or they're having difficulty collecting rents, or they're having difficult tenants, right, where they're calling in the middle of the night asking them to come replace a toilet seat and stuff like that. These people get tired of being a landlord. And so Greg makes a call to these individuals. He catches them at the right time, right? And they say, yeah, we'd like to go ahead and give this a shot. And Greg, what you're saying is you'll then go in, right? Sometimes without even the seller having come to have met you, and you're going to go in and say, okay, this is exactly what I think you need to do. I think if you do this, this, and this, we could get this amount. If you sell it like it is, we could get this amount. But I prefer you do these small things, right? Make a small investment. We could get infinitely more money, and maximize the ROI, correct?
That's correct. That's exactly right. And often I can even show them, I've got a team of some of the least expensive guys to come in and do these rehabs. And often they can't even believe the prices that I'm quoting them. And it's almost just like, as the old saying, it's just like a no-brainer. Like, why would you not do that if you can get that return? So one of the great things that I liked about, and why I moved to Compass, was, they have the concierge program where we actually pay for it up front. So then, I would get the objection, well, I'm not spending a dime. Okay, great. You don't have to spend a dime, because we're going to spend it for you, and you're going to reap the rewards from it. So that whole process has really helped with getting listings and getting the maximum amount of net money, not even the price, but the net money for the client.
Yep. And so the great thing about when you're having that conversation is, it's not oftentimes the easiest conversation to have. It's easy for an agent to say, hey, I'll take this listing, and, I can get X amount of money. And in some cases, it's unfortunate that, some agents will promise, an ARV value, in other words, after repair value, and they won't ask the seller to do any of those repairs, and then they'll just try to get price reductions throughout the listing. And it's unfortunate that happens, but I think you're really adding value to your clients when you're able to have that conversation about having the tools and technology to go out and be able to maximize the ROI. So what kind of pushback do you get other than, hey, we're not spending a dime on this thing? Or do you get any?
Sometimes I get pushback on timing. Well, I need to hurry up and sell. Okay, great. Well, I can have my guys over here, on Tuesday. They can be done by Friday. Is that quick enough for you? And they're like, wow, really? Because they just naturally think like rehab. You hear the word rehab, and you think that's going to take a month or more.
Yeah. Do you have any, Greg, any examples that come to mind where you were just able to have a conversation about maybe, going through, putting carpet, paint, maybe fixing, just a couple other items, and taking it from X number of dollars to, a lot more?
Absolutely. There was one in particular. It was a referral from a past client at a complex that, is pretty popular here in like the UTC area. This is probably going back a few years, so this is probably lower price as well than what they're doing now. But we were looking at like max, like maybe 385 for this 1-bedroom condo that's in this particular building. And I went in there in one day, and I had got him a budget for doing all these odds and ends, and it was like $5,000, not even, like maybe $4,000. And we ended up listing at $395 and then selling for $415.
Wow. Love it, man. I love it.
He was one of the ones, like, I get this a lot, like and they're saying it jokingly, but they see the after photos and they're like, wow, I don't want to sell it now.
Hey, what do you mean? We just went through and did all this work. I jokingly said, actually, in the marketing remarks for this, this episode that, happy sellers means more referrals, but that's reality. I say that tongue in cheek, but if you do like the example you just gave, right? You've just created a raving fan for yourself for the rest of your real estate business career, right?
For sure. For sure.
Yep. And so like, I guess if you're doing real estate and you're having authentic conversations with sellers, and then you're able to actually meet their expectations, are you doing any like lead gen that is just it's cold leads, or is most of your stuff SOI, or where's your business coming from now?
So those type of leads, I used to be on the phone a lot more, calling like cold calls, and that was I did the whole expired for sale by owner thing for a while, and I just got burned out on it. Out here where I'm at, expireds are getting hundreds of calls. I mean, just ridiculous. Yeah. And I was it was with a previous business coach I had. It was actually an interesting story. And he's like, I got some agents that are doing really well calling absentee owners, and especially because you've got some markets out there where people might have bought at a really good time, and now it's taken off, and maybe they want to sell that rental property, take the equity out, buy something else. And so we started doing these. I started doing these absentee calls, and it wasn't even like 5 days into doing this, and I called this guy, and I didn't even look up what apartment he had or what unit he had. It was calling downtown San Diego, where we do a decent amount of business, and he's like, actually, it is kind of funny. I do want to sell. He's like, when can you come over? And I go over and meet with him. Well, it's the penthouse at this building, $2.7 million listing.
Wow.
First one I got from Absentees.
No way, man.
Under contract, full price, cash offer in 8 days.
Unbelievable. What a great story. And I bet it was never hard to do after that, was it?
Absolutely not. I mean, the problem is Mike with it is, and it's just something I've always had with my career. It's boring.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of agents have that issue of like, wow, this is, it's repetitious boredom.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times I just get burnt out on it. And then sometimes I gravitate towards making those calls again. And, if you got to call about 70 to 100 conversations, not phone calls, conversations to get one of that type of lead source. So it's a lot of time, usually involved. But I've sold a good deal of real estate from that lead source. Nowadays, we still do a lot of online stuff. We still have the condo website I mentioned. That produces anywhere from 18 to, I think our highest year was about 24 million in production.
Wow.
Yeah, that thing has been a gold mine for the team. And then past client centers of influence is a big one. We do client parties, and we used to. We haven't lately. Didn't do one this year, but trying to take really good care of the past clients for sure.
Yeah. Can you share with the audience where you're able to collect the absentee data?
Yeah, pretty easy, other than one piece of the puzzle, and they can contact me directly, and I'll see what I can do. But I get a list from title and of absentee owners in specific areas, and I do have a guy that looks up phone numbers for me, and who's really good, who gets cell phone numbers, and I think pretty sure he just uses LexisNexis. The thing is, I have been asked to not give his info out like broadly.
Okay.
Give him referrals if somebody wants it.
Awesome, man. Are you guys doing any type of mailers to those people?
Not to those people. That's probably one of the things that I didn't follow through enough on. I should have really taken that lead source and really just honed in on it.
Yeah.
And again, it's probably one of my faults is I tend to kind of be like a little bit over here and a little bit over here. And I should have just honed down on that lead source more. But the only thing we're doing mailing wise is to PCCOI, and I do have a farm in Pacific Beach.
Okay. And the only reason I asked that, obviously the absentee, and I don't know why other agents don't catch on to this. In seller lead generation has always been something that realtors struggled with, right? And it seems to me like the investors had it figured out, but they could never marry the two. You know what I mean? Investors were always great at generating seller leads, and realtors weren't. And those agents who've been able to kind of play on both sides have had some success. And we do that. I have an investment company too, and we send out about 8,500 mailers a month. And one of the categories, obviously, that we mail to is absentee owners. We like absentee owners. We like out-of-state absentee owners. We mail distress, pre-foreclosure, divorce, probate. We're mailing. We have a new list now that we're mailing to that I'm really enjoying, which is bad credit, bad credit with equity, and then also refinance leads that were rejected that have equity too are doing really well for us right now. And so I think, again, people like you who have been able to make that connection between, absentee, we call them distressed, right? There's some form of distress there, have done really well with it. And you've actually built a business on it. So much so that, you've been able to travel, 3, 4, 5, 7 months out of the year. I want to talk a little bit more about that, man, and I know that's kind of off topic, but I think it's really interesting when you talk to somebody like you who really, real estate is not your life, right? Real estate is the vehicle that you've chosen to design the life that you want for yourself and for your family. And so talk to me about, like, when did you become this person, or have you always been this person, Greg, that has wanted to travel the world and kind of, I'm sure you've read the 4-Hour Workweek, right? Oh, yeah. And in a lot like that, right, where you can kind of set up your business wherever you want to. But where did the idea of this come from, and what drives that?
It's kind of funny. I got out of a relationship years and years and years ago, and I had this. This had to be like 2009 or something like that, and I realized that I had never really been anywhere international except for like Mexico and Canada. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, there's this huge world out there. And so I just pulled out a map, or actually the globe, I think, and that I have. And I just started going, okay, if I was going to go around the world, where would I go? And I kind of, pinpointed some areas that were all sort of in alignment. And I wanted to literally take a trip around the world. Yeah. And so the first one was a 4-month trip in 2010. I went all over, Southeast Asia, Australia, South America, just this continuous trip. And it was, as soon as I got done doing that one, I was like, I want to do that again. I want to do it twice as long. Yeah. And then as soon as I did the next one that was, almost twice as long, I then said, oh, I'm going to go do that for a year. And I actually had this plan to do it for 2020. I was going to travel for all of 2020 until I went to Myanmar, Burma, several years ago, and something hit me, and I was like, you know what? I met the people there, and they were so interesting and fascinating, and it planted the seed that, you know what? I think I want to just really do this indefinitely until something causes me to stop, or maybe I found somewhere else to live, or whatever. Yeah. It's like, how many people really are able to do that and build a business and do that? And so I switched gears, which thank God that happened, because I would have been trying to do a trip around the world in 2020. It would have been a disaster.
That would have been an absolute disaster, man.
Yeah. And now, lo and behold, I'm actually having my biggest year right now, probably because I'm not traveling. Yeah. But when you did say something, about the balance part of it, or just not, having it your entire life. I will tell you this: when I am in San Diego and I'm not traveling, I am like nose down in like 6.5 days a week, 6.5 days a week of hustle, long days. I love to work hard. I love making deals happen, and I just get so hyper focused on it. Yeah. And then the results come, and then you go travel. That's sort of how it's been.
Greg, where's the most interesting place you've ever been?
Whoo! When I traveled on that trip in 2014, everybody kept asking me, where was your favorite place? And that's so hard to answer. That's like asking like your favorite food or your favorite band or something like that. Yeah. Just impossible. But I did come up with 2 answers just for that trip. And there was 2 places that I went. And one was a country that I said was my favorite country. And on that trip, it was Vietnam. I love Vietnam. It was fantastic.
What do you like about it?
The food, the culture, the people were friendly as can be. I was fortunate enough to go trek a 7-day trek into the world's largest cave in Vietnam, which we were the 80th to 88th tourists to ever even go into it, because they just discovered it in 2010. That was just incredible. And people say a cave, you were in a cave for a week. And this thing is massive. I mean, it's the world's largest. You can fly a 747 through it.
Wow.
You know, that's how big it is.
Yeah.
Hang Song Dong, look it up. It's mind blowing. People are like, you've been there? So when you combined all those things, that was the coolest country I went to on the trip. But the coolest place that my feet stood for one moment in time was the base of Mount Everest on the Tibetan side.
Wow.
When you come from Tibet, you get to see the entire mountain.
Yeah.
When you come from Nepal, you just get to see little peaks of it. So I cried. It was just incredible.
Yeah. Did you do any of the monk tours or anything, the meditation tours or anything like that?
That tour through Tibet was basically like a big monastery tour. It was basically all you did. So yes and no. We got to see a lot. I mean, we spent 14 days in Tibet. So
what a really cool experience that must have been, man. Holy cow.
Unreal.
Yeah.
I love meeting like different people from around the world and getting to know them as much as you can. Even if you don't speak the language, you can still communicate. And that to me is like the most fascinating thing.
Do you go solo or do you take people with you? How does that work?
I typically go solo on these bigger trips, but I have had people meet with me for certain parts of it. I've got surfing buddies and they'll meet up, at a spot and we'll surf. And then I'll meet, a couple more down the road at some other place. And then the 2010 trip, I met up with people that I met in 2010 on 2014.
Yeah.
And then I like to do a lot of some of the stuff you have to do like in a group thing. Like you can't go to Tibet on your own. You have to be in a group to get a visa. And then like live aboard dive boats. There's a lot of group sort of stuff. But I always say, people say, oh, you travel alone. I said, no, I don't travel alone. I travel with everybody because it's one of the best things I ever did in my life. And it gets you so out of your comfort zone is just going somewhere completely, foreign and being there by yourself.
Yeah.
You really get to know who you are and you get to the point where you're going to build rapport and conversations with people.
Have you ever felt like you were in danger?
The only time of all places I ever felt like I was in danger was, if you can imagine this, and I've been to a lot of crazy countries, but it was Australia of all places. And I had a friend I was driving around in and staying in. I had it for like a couple of weeks. And I parked in this like kind of into this park, and these like group of like kind of strange guys started coming around and checking everything out. I'm like, oh my God, are these guys going to jump in and rob me? Like, what's going on? I snuck up and got in the driver's seat and turned it on and bolted.
Oh my gosh, man, that is so crazy. I mean, I could probably talk to you, for another hour about your experiences abroad, maybe even more. But what I think's really cool there is, and what I want people to understand, and the reason why I took the show there for a moment is that your passion for real estate is what created all that, right? What and again, I said, you use the vehicle of real estate to create the resources to be able to do things like that. And that is the beauty of our industry. And I think that's why I do shows like this, is because I'm trying to create content for people to consume so that they can live a life like yours, Greg, and do the things that they want to do when they want to do them.
Yep. That's exactly it right there. I'm not big on, big fancy expensive watches and stuff like that. I'm more about experiences. So to me, that's like where my focus is.
Well, I love it, man. Listen, let me ask you this. How can people get in touch with you? I know you had mentioned also that you have a gentleman that can retrieve data for people or phone numbers for absentee owners. If people want to learn more about that or just more about the person, Greg Cummings, or his travels abroad, how can they get in touch with you, Greg?
I would say a couple things. So, Instagram is the Greg Cummings with underscores in between, the Greg Cummings. And that Instagram account's a little bit newer. I switched to a business one, and so it doesn't have as much fascinating like travel stuff that I've posted on my other page or whatever. And then Facebook, again, Greg Cummings, pretty easy to spot me on there. And then my email is greg@gregcummings.com. So always emails work great. And of course, if anybody wants to call me, 858-717-0730. So that's all the basic contact info there.
Awesome, man. Well, as usual, I love sharing these stories week after week because I know this show is literally changing agents' financial lives, my own included. Do me a big favor, if you know someone that might enjoy the podcast, Please, please, please share it with them. And if you like the podcast, please go to wherever you listen to podcasts and make sure and subscribe. Don't forget to visit MikeWallLive.com for 8 hours of absolutely free real estate business training. And if you want a meeting with me, myself, and I, 30 minutes, no strings attached, go to meetmikewall.com. Greg, thank you so much. You have definitely delivered today. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and learn more about you.
Awesome. Thank you. It's an honor to have been invited on here. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. We will talk again soon, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.